Hey, family, it's your sister Jocelyn here, and welcome to another episode of Faith on the Journey. If this is your first time tuning in, we welcome you. We are so glad that you are here and want you to know that we're committed to helping you strengthen your faith, heal your heart, and discover a sense of community. And we do so through a variety of ways by connecting you with a team of Christian counselors who specialize in trauma based trauma healing and grief counseling. We also offer trauma healing groups throughout the year, and we train churches on how to start trauma healing ministries. You can learn about these resources and so much more by visiting our website at faithonthejourney.org. Again, that is faithonthejourney.org. Now, today we have a beautiful woman of God joining us on the show to share her incredible testimony of dealing with the painful loss of a child. Miss Carole Sluski is a mother of two daughters and a grandmother of two granddaughters. Tragically, she experienced a parent's worst nightmare when she lost her beautiful daughter, her youngest, several years ago. She writes about this experience in her book, Thirsty, a mother's spiritual journey after losing her child. We're so grateful to have Carole on the show with us today. Welcome, Carole.
Hello, thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you for accepting the invitation and for being so bold to talk about this painful experience in your life. Before we get into the topic of today, just share a little bit about yourself. What was life like before you experienced this loss? Just give us some background information about you.
Well, first of all, my daughter died 30 years ago. Before that, life was pretty good to me. I begin my book talking about myself and when I got out of high school and started working. I didn't go to college. Actually, college wasn't even talked about at my table. My parents were middle class. My dad worked as an inventor. He used to go to factories and take a look at equipment and design equipment that would help the workers. And my mother, she started working when uh, we were in school. I have two sisters. I'm the middle child. It was just a common little family, just, the five of us. And I loved my sisters. I loved my mom and dad. And I look back and I just, I miss that family, that little family unit. But I do believe that they're in heaven. And as time went by, I got married. I started a family right away. My first daughter, she was healthy when she was born. Everything was beautiful. 20 months later, I had my second child. Her name is Paula, and this is my daughter that didn't make it through life too long. She lived till she was 24. The book that I wrote is basically not on me before her death. It's about my survival after her death. I went through so much pain and I got very, very sick. I wound up having surgeries. It was like one thing, it was almost like an accordion or like a ladder that you walk up the ladder and then you start falling down one step at a time. And everyone thought I was doing well. But as it turned out, I was internally hurting so bad that it affected my health. And when she died, I was 47 years old and she was 24. And she died very, very instantly. It was fast. I had no warning of it. I wasn't present at her death. And that caused me a little guilt at the time when I did find out that she was, not coming back. Why did I write this book? I spent 30 years in the healing process, and it was a learning experience. The biggest learning experience for me was I no longer just believed in God. I believed in God as being alive within me. I could touch him, feel him, and he's the one who got me through the years. 30 years, that's a long, long time. And I didn't just step into being, okay, surviving. It was one step at a time. I go forward, I come back, go forward, come back. Third chapter of my book, I write how I found a mentor. A lot of people are asking me, why? Why did I choose this lady? Why? Why did I pick her? And that's Blessed Virgin Mary. Because I had what I call my own private miracle happen at at the funeral, where I felt her presence within me to say, I'm going to help you, Carole. And I only want to help to get through that day. Just make me get through this day, please. And she did. I had this feeling come over me that was actually like I witnessed and saw all these people going to Paula saying, welcome, welcome, Paula, because she was in heaven. At the wake, I don't know if they do wakes like they did years ago, but back then we had like 2-day wakes. And we presented our beloved one. There was always a waiting line. Well, as I stood in the waiting line, of course, being the first one, I was her mother. So the people greeted me first. Everyone was saying to me, oh, we're so sorry, we're so sorry, we're so sorry. I remember so clearly, like it was yesterday, that I wanted to scream and say, don't be sorry for me. She is in heaven. She's in heaven. She's rejoice. She's in heaven. But I didn't say that because I knew they'd probably think I'm a wacko, saying that. So I kept that to myself. But it made me feel good. I was able to smile and hug everyone and just respect that they were there. As I go into detail about my feelings and how it felt to lose a child. I lost my father before that, and I know I felt really devastated. But yes, I mean, to me, this is all about, to me, there's a difference. There was a difference between my father's death and my daughter. My father was a caretaker to me, just as my mother. But at that time, Paula died, my mother was still alive, my dad was deceased. But my dad was a caretaker. He took care of me. Paula, I was the caretaker. I took care of her. So that's the difference. Around the circle of being a caretaker, there's all this extra and deep attachment with your child. You don't realize it at the time. You take everything for granted. Just like her coming home from school. What is that? Walking in the door. Hi, Mom. You know what that is? That becomes a habit. You hear it. You see it every day. You hear it. You see her. My little habit that I had for 24 years was no longer there. She was gone, physically gone from the face of the earth. I could have traveled anywhere in the world and I would never have found her again. She's gone. I couldn't make her again, even if I had another baby. It wouldn't be Paula.
And Carol, with that reality, I know that at the wake, you said that the Lord was giving you peace, and was helping you through that and reminding you where she was at. But I'm sure at some moment there was tremendous grief, as you described, recognizing that if you traveled across the world, you would never see her again. What really helped you during those dark moments in your life when you were grieving your daughter? And if you can share this from the perspective of speaking to a parent who recently lost their child and is also experiencing that level of grief.
At that moment at the funeral, that those hours that I was there, what I needed was to get through that. I didn't want to pass out. I didn't want to start crying. So I got through that. When I went home by myself, alone, I wasn't married, but Denny wasn't there at for the moments, the grief, the crying. It's like in and out, in and out. It's like a wave. I remember one of the moms that I met later in the years after she died. She told me it was like a big wave of grief that just came over and just whooshed you and overwhelmed you. That the grief is so bad. It hurts so hard. It's like it just cuts out your heart. In fact, I wound up getting cardiomyopathy, heart disease, and not ischemic, which means there was no reason they could find why I had the heart disease. One doctor did say possible a broken heart syndrome. So that didn't matter, the cause. The result was I lived. I lived through it. I almost died twice. But I lived through it because God was there.
There are certain moments in life that wreck us. Whether it's the unexpected loss of a loved one, divorce, betrayal, or abuse at the hands of someone who was supposed to protect us. Trauma can completely shatter our world. Now, many of us have heard that time heals all wounds, but time without the proper care for our emotional wounds will leave us feeling stuck at the source of our pain. We might be able to hide our pain from others, but deep down inside, we know it's still there. If you are tired of running from your past, I encourage you to take one courageous step and schedule a free informational session with a member of our counseling team. Our Christian counselors can provide a safe, supportive environment to process and heal your pain. They understand how difficult the healing journey can be and will walk alongside of you the entire way. Stop running from your past. It's time to heal. Visit faithonthejourney.org for more information on how you can get started today. Carole, you just said something like really big, so I need to pause for a second. You said you almost died twice as a result of the broken heart, essentially.
I think it was a broken heart that caused my heart. I didn't have anything wrong with vessels. It was my heart itself. It weakened. They put a defibrillator in me. They did that 2 days later, before they found that I had cardiomyopathy. This is years later, 18, 20 years later, after she died. I couldn't walk up the stairs. I got totally exhausted, couldn't even breathe. And so I went to my doctor, and she said, "We're going to give you a big heart exam, have all the tests done." Well, I only had one test, and that was the ultrasound. They stopped at that and said, "You have to go home. You got to call your doctor." What it was is that a normal reading is between 50 and 70. My reading was 14. And I found out later 14 means I'm dying. So they put me on medication or treatment. So that's the first time I considered that I almost died. If I hadn't gone to the doctor when I did, I don't know how long I would have had without, medical treatment. Then when they put the defibrillator in me, for some reason, my body, I don't know if it was starting to reject it, but I wound up going to the hospital in extreme pain. And what happened was I had water around my heart. So they had to do an emergency surgery to drain the fluid from around my heart and to adjust my defibrillator. I guess that's what it was. But I write a lot about that. It's like it's detailed to a point. And I believe that looking back now, there's a couple of times that I'm thinking, why did God save me? Or did I save myself? My desire to, in which I would have to say it's still God, because the Holy Spirit would have come into me and said, "Got to live. You have a purpose. My purpose is this. I'm here. I'm telling you. I'm telling the world that you can make it if you lose a child. Hang in there. Hang in there. I'll tell you what I did to survive. And it worked for me. I'm living. 30 years is a long, long time. Statistically, I did some homework. Statistically, a lot of moms will make it for 10 years and then they die. They could die. A lot of women have died from this. And a lot of divorces. Divorces are rampant between moms and dads. And I know after 30 years, in my experience, I believe I found why. Why do they, why? Why don't they make it? Why can't they love each other and help one another to get through this together? It's because they both are grieving in a different way. Okay. I was fortunate. I had a man that I was getting married to for the second time. I was divorced with Paula's dad. He was there for me. He was not Paula's father, so he didn't have that burden on him of grief. And does that make sense? He didn't have that burden of grief. So he gave all of his attention to me when I needed it. I'd say, "Oh, please, Danny, help me. Am I going to be okay? Am I going to be okay?" And he'd say, "Yes, you're going to be okay. Just take one step at a time. Just let it out. Don't hold it back." And, if he was Paula's father, he'd be hurting himself so bad. And I really think that's a big part of the divorces is that they can't do it together because it's so big. So you have to really pray on it.
With the prayer, 100% prayer. In addition to prayer, are there some other things that if a couple, like in your case, if it was your husband's biological daughter and he was also grieving at the same time, is there some advice or resources that you would recommend someone taking advantage of in order to get the support they need to make it?
If I was in that situation where I was married, my first husband's name is Jim. If I was married to Jim at the time of her death and we were having difficulty getting through this together and started having marital problems, I would definitely not even wait that long to go get help. Yeah, I would seek out a counselor, but my counselor has to be spiritual. Number one, because I went to grief therapy. I went for myself, by myself. My first try at it was at a hospital where it was a group of people sitting together with, a leader, and no one talked about God. It was 10 of us. No one talked about God. I was the last one to talk. I started talking about God, how I really needed this support from him, and I was getting it. Everybody was so quiet. When I left, it was like I'm not going back. When I'm saying that you get support, so if you do go for support, make sure you're going to get the right support. What is life without God? That was my biggest thing. If I didn't believe in God, to me it wasn't worth. Why even are you living? What's life about? And at least I felt and knew that my daughter was in a better place. I believe she's in heaven. I believe she went right to heaven. I also believe that her soul came back and visited me because I used to feel her presence. So yes, I'm not going to say don't get help. Get help. Search. Get the right help because what they're going to tell you, you're going to live with it for the rest of your life, and it could be life or death. And to me, if you want to really live, what you do is you ask God, talk to Him. You ask Him, what do I do to survive? My answer came to me through the Holy Spirit. I felt it, and it's you have to do this by yourself. You have to work on yourself, get strong, take care of your health. If you're working, start working harder, start putting your energy into it because when you start thinking about other things, you're not going to be thinking about your child. It's going to be taking up some time within you. That's part of the healing. Now we start the healing. You're thinking about your loved one all the time and then you're crying and crying. Well, that's breaking you down. When you start to putting some attention into yourself, then you start losing a little bit of that time that you have given your loved one. You get your healing from that. And the longer that time goes by, the more time you're putting into yourself. Use your own talent. You have to start using yourself. What I did was I started painting. I mean, I've always been an artist, but I did that part-time. Well, when Paula died, I started painting. I think a couple of weeks after she died, I just got my paintbrushes out and I started painting. And that helped me. Maybe couple months later, I started working again. I took some time off from work and I started the process there. Was it a win-win situation right away? Do you think that I 3 months or 5 months or 6 months I was well? Other people think so. You should be well, but it took me years. But each time, each day that went by, I got a little bit better and a little bit better. And then maybe I'd have a slip up and I'd start crying. And but that's okay. That's almost good. You don't want to forget about your child. I love Paula 30 years later, sharing this with you. I love her still, but I'm happy. My gosh, I'm happy. I have so much to live for. God has given me a direction in my life and said, and to be patient. You must be patient with yourself. You know, my other daughter got married down the road. I became a grandmother. It opened all these doors were going to open for you. So the process that I present to my readers, I want to give them hope. And if you want to have that wonderful feeling again, you got to look around, see what you've got left, and you take that and you put it in your arms and you just smother it. You give it love. I changed. I became a better person. I think I did anyway. I feel like I'm a better person. I mean, I never was bad, but I think differently now.
Yeah, something like that, it changes you. But, the beautiful part that I see in your story is that as painful as it was for years you were grieving, there's beauty in the woman that you've become in terms of your closeness to God, your boldness for sharing your story with others, and the value that you hold, as you were describing, in the things that you still have. And so I'm grateful for your willingness to share your story and encourage others. And I wish we had more time, but I do want to give you a moment just to give some final remarks to those who might find themselves in this situation, and they are just holding on by a thread, and they need some words of hope. What final remarks would you share with someone who is struggling with this today?
The first thing that came to my mind, Reverend Jones, when you asked that question or directed me to give an answer, I think that I want everyone to know how I feel about God. But I believe whatever you are, if you believe in God, you want to pray and believe. Because if you believe that there's something greater than yourself or human, if you believe that we have a maker, a creator, you're going to make it. You just have to be strong. You just have to give yourself time. Don't think you're going to get over this in a day. And this book is not just for people that lost a child, it's for our families, our friends. So they don't think that in a year, you're great. You can't go out and buy another Paula. I couldn't replace her. I never got her back. But that doesn't mean I still don't love her. You know, there's a there's a bond that we have with our children that's just incredibly strong. And I never ever knew how strong it was until I lost her. That was my lesson out of all of this is that your children, whether they're, you know, even I write about adoption because I've been asked, I've had a lot of women that adopted children that ask me, I don't know what happens, but God gives us something in their DNA and our DNA that when if you adopt somebody, you're going to love them just like you love if you gave birth to them. I do believe that your adopted child will become your birth child through what God has given us. God's given us something. I don't even know what it is. Well, I have no label for it. I don't have a name to call it, but it's connection. It's being caretaker. It's being a melting pot that you just go into one. A family is just so, so strong. And that even means through divorce, through death with your mate, you still have family.
Yes, you do. You do. And I am grateful for you coming on the show today, Carol, and sharing this message. And I encourage those who might have experienced something similar to this, a tragic loss in your life, to grab a copy of Carol's book. You can find it available on Amazon, and we'll make sure that we have that information available on the show notes in which you can get in touch with Carol. We also have her email address, cjstudio@comcast.net, or you can follow her on YouTube at Carole Jean Studio. Perfect, perfect. Well, thank you so much, Carole, for being on the show with us today. Again, thank you for sharing your testimony. God bless you in your ministry. And I hope to follow you as you continue to grow and help others who've experienced such a loss.
Thank you so much for allowing me to be here.
Yes, we're grateful for you, Carole. And thank you all for tuning into today's episode. As always, we appreciate you. We are here to serve you and support you during those difficult times in your life. And if you are looking for a Christian counselor who specializes in grief and loss, please reach out to us. You can reach us on our website at faithonthejourney.org. Again, that is faithonthejourney.org. There you can find out about resources such as our trauma healing groups, our grief support groups, and so much more. As always, if you enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to leave a 5-star review and to share this with a friend. So that's it for this time. Thanks again for tuning in. And until next time, you keep your faith on the journey. I'll see you soon.